G6 Productions.
Good afternoon. The Committee on Budget, Appropriations and Finance meeting of April 6, 2024 is hereby called to order. Before I call the roll call, I know that we still have some of my colleagues that are making their way to the chambers because we attended the naming of the Cyril E. King Airport Transportation Center after engineer Dale A. Gregory, who spent 37 years of his career working as an engineer at the Virgin Islands Port Authority as a chief engineer. So I know folks are working their way from that. So I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Dale A. Gregory on the naming of the Cyril E. King Airport Transportation Center in his honor, well-deserving honor. Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you if, let me see if there's anyone on St. Croix. I think we have a quorum, so we're going to move forward with the roll call. May I have the roll call, please?
Senator Marvin A. Blyden.
Present.
Senator Blyden, present. Senator Samuel Carrion. Senator Samuel Carrion, absent. I can't. Senator Samuel Carrion, present. Senator Dwayne M. DeGraff.
Here.
Senator Dwayne M. DeGraff, present. Senator Ray Fonseca.
I'm here.
Senator Fonseca, present. Senator Noble E. Francis Jr. Senator Francis Jr., absent. Senator Donna A. Fred Gregory.
Here.
Senator Fred Gregory, present. Senator Javon E. James Sr. Senator James Sr., absent. Madam Chair, 5 present, 2 absent at a roll call.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can you please read today's agenda into the record?
Committee on Budget, Appropriations and Finance. The 35th Legislature's Committee on Budget, Appropriations and Finance will meet on Tuesday, April 16th, 2024 at 12:30 p.m. in the Earle Ottley Legislative Chambers on St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. Block 1. The committee will receive a financial overview from the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network, VINGN, a public corporation, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Virgin Islands Public Finance Authority. Invited testifier, Mr. Stephen Adams, President and CEO, Virgin Islands Next Generation Network. Block 2, Bill number 350204, an act appropriating $3 million from the general fund of the government of the Virgin Islands to the Virgin Islands Police Department for the purchase and installation of cameras throughout the territory. Invited testifiers are Ms. Jennifer O'Neill, Director, Office of Management and Budget, Mr. Ray Martinez, Commissioner, Virgin Islands Police Department. That's in the agenda for today, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And as the clerk shared with us, we will hear from the leadership of the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network on their financial and operating status. And we are poised to consider Bill number 35-024. However, I believe that we have some concerns with that measure, so we may be moving to remove that measure from today's agenda. But as we contemplate that, we will move forward with the discussion today with the Virgin Islands Next Generation Next Network. This afternoon, we have before us Mr. Stephen Adams, President and CEO, and I note that he also has with him, I'm not certain of her title, but I know that her name is Miss Elisa Hodge, and I believe she is the CFO or the controller for the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network. So we're going to ask them to put their names and titles on the record, and then we'll proceed with the testimony. We're going to start with Mr. Adams. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman. Stephen Adams, President and CEO of VINGN.
Good afternoon, Elisa Hodge, Controller.
All right, Mr. Adams, are you prepared to move forward with your testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable Donna Fred Gregory, Chairman of the Committee on the Budget, Appropriation and Finance, Honorable Senators, and the listening and viewing audience. I am Stephen Adams, President and CEO of VINGN, Inc. With me today is Ms. Elisa Hodge, our Controller. Thank you for the invitation. I am honored to present to you today. I would like to begin with an overview of VINGN. VINGN is a public corporation that is wholly owned subsidiary of the Virgin Islands Public Finance Authority, PFA. It was established on October 8, 2010, and funded by a $67.5 million federal grant and a $36.8 million bond approved by the 29th Legislature. Our founding mission is to provide wholesale open access middle mile broadband services to internet service providers, ISPs, over a pure fiber network. VINGN is governed by Articles of Incorporation. We are governed by an independent board of directors comprised of the Honorable Governor Albert Bryan Jr. as chairman, Keith O'Neill as secretary, and members John Clendenin, Gordon Ackley, Andy Smith, President and CEO of WAPA, and me, Stephen Adams. Although WAPA has poll right equity and a seat on our board, we pay market rates for our electricity bill and water bill. Only the 3 private sector board members receive $350 per meeting. The board meets quarterly, 4 times a year, to receive operational and financial updates and approve any policy changes or expenditures over $250,000. The company's daily operations are managed by 26 highly credentialed and skilled employees at two locations, one in St. Thomas and at our headquarters in St. Croix. We now own our headquarter building, which we have occupied since inception. BINGN's ISP partners include VIA, Broadband VI Liberty, Alliance Data Systems, ADM Wireless, Land Communications, First Stop Communications, Omni Systems, High Tide Solutions, Reach Communications, and BIT UVI WTJX. The company was also recipient of several grants. The major ones are from FEMA and the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, administered by the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. Other grants are National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA, and the Federal Communications Commission, FCC. A schedule of our grant activities is provided. BINGN does not receive any funding from the central government or the legislature. The FEMA and ARPA grants form the basis of the company's 3-year capital program. The FEMA portfolio is permanent work and resiliency related to damage caused to our infrastructure and buildings after Hurricanes Irma and Maria. The $10.8 million ARPA Community Wi-Fi Grant Award funds Wi-Fi hotspots in public spaces. 95 have been installed thus far and counting. Senior centers are prioritized. Funds are also being used for core network upgrades from 10 gigabytes per second to 100 gigabytes per second. This will significantly increase our network bandwidth capacity. To date, we have received and expended $5.4 million in grant. We are awaiting final determination of ARPA disbursement for fiscal year 2024. BINGN was also awarded a $150,000 Digital Equity and Inclusion Grant from NTIA to develop the territory's digital equity plan. This involved extensive community engagement. The DE plan complements the $27 million Broadband Equity Access and Deployment BEAD program administered by OMB. BEAD's focus is to ensure Virgin Islanders have access to affordable high-speed internet. DE's focus is on promoting digital resiliency and digital skills in the territory to bridge the digital divide. A draft of the DE plan was published on March 28, 2024, and is available for public comment through April 28, 2024. Anyone can download the plan from BINGN's website, www.bingn.com, which I encourage you all to do. BINGN has received a follow-up Notice of Funding Opportunity, NOFO, for the $2.1 million DE Capacity Grant. We will apply by July 31st, 2024 deadline. One key strategic BINGN imperative is Diaspora Link. This is our long-term initiative to run undersea cables from the U.S. mainland to the continent of Africa via the U.S. Virgin Islands. This is a matter of national security. Diaspora Link Bill H.R. 3385 passed the U.S. House of Representatives on March 5th, 2024. It now goes to the U.S. Senate for a vote and then to President Biden for signature. This bill will authorize NTIA to conduct a feasibility study on the construction of this critical infrastructure. I will now provide a brief financial overview. Fiscal year key accounting policies and audits. BINGN fiscal year is October 1st to September 30th. This is consistent with the government of the Virgin Islands and the PFA fiscal year. Grant revenues is recorded as non-operating revenue because it is not generated directly from broadband operations. Capital expenditures are recorded as fixed assets on the balance sheet, while repairs, maintenance, and records are recorded as operational expenses on our income statement. Our financial statements include a statement of revenue and expenses, which is the income statement, and a statement of net position, which is the balance sheet. The statement of revenue and expenses includes a calculation of earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, EBITDA, which measures corporate profitability. VINGN is audited by BDO. The last audit completed was for fiscal year 2021. VINGN's audits can be found publicly at the PFA website. The fiscal year 2022 audit is in progress and is scheduled to be completed by May 31st, 2024. Preparation has begun on fiscal 2023 audit with our CPA consultants, Benjamin and Hodge. Revenue. In 2023, operating revenue was $5 million and are projected to be $4.9 million in 2024. In 2023, certain ISPs discontinued service while others acquired new services, resulting in a net revenue decline. Other revenue opportunities include cloud services and monetization of Wi-Fi after the grant period of performance. Cloud services generated $119,000 in 2023 and $98,000 this far in 2024. VINGN's core pricing structure has not changed since its establishment. Consequently, we are in the process of conducting a comprehensive pricing review. Our goal is to be able to offer more competitive pricing for our ISP partners. Expenses. VINGN's operating expenses consist primarily of salaries and benefits, utilities, insurance, building rent, legal fees, operating maintenance, depreciation, and amortization. Total operating expenses for 2023 were $10.2 million and projected to be $10.6 million in 2024. The increase is attributed to the annualized impact of salary increases awarded in fiscal year 2023. Salary increases were awarded to employees based on merit, industry standards, and retention of talent. The previous salary increases was in 2016 at 3%. The CEO's compensation is determined by the board of directors and is governed by a non-disclosure agreement. Key areas of concern. The existence of VINGN as an ongoing concern is not currently in question. However, a key area of concern is this $36.8 million bond. By PFA resolution, this bond is to be treated as a loan that can be converted to equity at PFA's election. This matter has been discussed at several PFA and VINGN board meetings. To date, the interest rate has not been determined and amortization schedule has not been established. Based on our current fiscal standing, VINGN does not have and does not foresee the ability to repay the $36.8 million loan without assistance. VINGN has made a case for the bond to be forgiven. PFA has directed us to seek federal grant opportunities to cover this debt. Another concern is the impact of the $84.5 million USVI Connect grant that was awarded to Broadband VI Liberty to connect every home and business to the internet. This award prevents any other public or private entity from obtaining federal grants for infrastructure projects due to federal duplication rules. Consequently, millions of infrastructure broadband dollars are not available to VINGN until 2030, which is the end of the USVI Connect performance period. This concludes my opening remarks. Thank you for your attention to my testimony. Ms. Hodge and I look forward to addressing any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Colleagues, we're going to go to a 5-minute round. But of course, I have to ask a very quick question before we start. So you spoke specifically to the $36.8 million bond that was issued. When was that bond issued?
The bond was 2011.
2011.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's currently being paid how?
Currently, we don't have insight into the bond.
See?
Currently, we do not have insight into the bond. It was PFA. It's a PFA bond, and we've been notified that it's been converted into a loan to VINGN. We have no insight into the $36.8 million
What
bond.
was the purpose of the $36.8 million?
It was part of the match for the building of VINGN to begin with. So it was a combination of three. VINGN was established with three components. One was the federal grant, one was the bond, and then there was $25 million in in-kind contribution from WAPA, which is why they have a board seat and equity position in the company.
Okay, so this $36 million was used to build out the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network.
That's
As a
correct.
matching requirement. And currently, that bond was led by the Virgin Islands Public Finance Authority.
That's correct.
I have to look back at that. I'm trying to figure out how that bond is being paid. So you are not utilizing any of your current operating revenues to hit this?
No. Early
Okay.
in my tenure, I was. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Early in my tenure, I asked about this bond and was notified that there was no interest accrued or an amortization schedule for this bond, and that it would just been held on our books. I've raised this issue numerous times at PFA and VINGN board meetings. As you know, I report into the PFA, and we don't have clarity about our
So it
obligation.
sits on your books
It sits on our books as a loan
as a loan.
from the PFA.
Okay.
And it's also on their books as well.
Ms. Hodge, do you have any information? I just need to get some clear clarification on this. Because it was used to build out the Next Generation Network as a match. They had to come to the legislature. Well, yeah, that was 2011,
Yeah.
to get the bonds let. So I don't know. That sounds like it's part of a larger bond that's tied to our gross receipts. But we would have to
Yes.
check. So, and that's, I asked the question, you know why I asked the question? I asked the question because many of our semi-autonomous, autonomous type entities, they come before the legislature and they say that they don't receive funding from the legislature, but you do.
Yeah.
Because this $36.8 million is being paid by the people. Okay? And in order for this to be paid, when we work on our budgets and our appropriations for the respective fiscal years, we have to shave off that debt to make sure that that debt is covered. So it seems as if this bond was let, if I'm not mistaken, under the John DeYoung administration.
Yes.
So that was tied to gross receipts. That was a part of a whole, a bunch of projects, and this was piece. So we'll look closely at this, but I just wish to remind you that if we are, I don't know what the debt is, so we're going to find that out. We're going to ask our post auditor to please find out from the PFA before we leave today what is the debt, the annual debt associated with that and how it's paid. Naturally, it has to, I'm making an assumption, but we need to get clarification as to what the source is that covers this. So you said that the government has asked you, the PFA has said, so it's now sitting on as a loan on your books.
Yes.
So you're carrying that loan as a loan that you're not paying.
Correct. And we're not incurring any interest on it either because we haven't been given an interest rate.
Okay, so it's sitting on your books as a liability, but you sitting as a liability for how long? How long did it convert to a loan?
And
2012.
Also, it converted immediately after, under the same administration. And does the governor of the Virgin Islands still serve on the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network
he is the
on
chair.
board?
He
He's
is
the chair, right?
Yes,
Okay, and he's also the chair
chair of the PFA.
of the PFA. So we need to get our house in order. We do. We're going to get the information, and then we will get back, because it's important for us to have a clear understanding of this as well, because it means that when we shave off the funding to pay our bonds for that particular year, for our operating bonds that were floated in 2011, so we are contributing to the Public Finance Authority, the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network. Okay, so we're going to move to the senators. Senator Fonseca, you're recognized for your point of information, and then we're going to go directly to Senator DeGraff for his 5 minutes. You may proceed, Senator Fonseca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quickly, that $36.8 million bond, first I have to congratulate you on the full disclosure. That's very good information. But you were instructed to pursue federal opportunities, and you also have discussed forgiveness. So are there any formal correspondence where you're asking for forgiveness, and what federal opportunities have you pursued?
Thank you for the question. Last year we approached the USDA for a particular type of grant that they had that we could have used for paying down this loan. It was a national, I do not recall the name of the particular grant, but there was $15 million that were available, but it was nationwide. I was introduced to the secretary, and they inquired on our behalf, and they said that the funds had already allocated. So that was the only avenue that we found where we could get federal help with this grant, with this bond.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator Fonseca. We're now going to go to Senator DeGraff for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, testifiers, all of you and listeners and present. All these numbers had me a little confused, and the 36.8 don't clear up anything for me. We got $67.5 million of federal loan. How was that money used?
All the monies that were used in 2000, once the INGN was established in 2010, was all used to be able to dig trenches and put fiber into the ground, build these 24 access points as you see on the side of the roads is where our communication equipment is, and to be able to hang fiber on WAPA poles. Since Hurricanes Irma and Maria, all the infrastructure that was on WAPA poles was destroyed. We rebuilt that, and we sustained damage to some of our facilities, and we're in the process of repairing those damaged points that are in our grants report.
So the total aggregate of 67.5 and 36.8 is what was used to complete all of that.
In addition to that, there was a match of $25 million from WAPA, which was for the pole rights. So yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so then if you're not paying back a loan, your revenues for 23 are $5 million and projected $4.9 million in 24. But your expenses are $10 million plus. How do you cover paying for your employees and your gave salary increase? How do you cover that?
Because what needs to be understood here is that the way we have reimbursements from FEMA for grants, and then how we calculate our expenditures for grants. So our calculations on grants is in that number, but from an operating standpoint, we're on the edge.
But right, so your calculation as grants does not go as revenue. That's what I think that's what you had stated. So that doesn't go as revenue.
Okay. I think one of the metrics that we use at VINGN, which is different than I believe the other entities use, is that we use EBITDA.
Use what?
We use a metric called EBITDA to be able to say how the company is actually doing, which is basically from an operating standpoint. And from an operating standpoint, VINGN has never been in the black. just in full disclosure, VINGN has always been in the red from its inception, and it remains in the red. However, under my administration, leadership, what we have been doing is working diligently to be able to run the company like a corporation, which is why we changed to EBITDA to be able to see operationally outside of grants. If you take grants out of the equation of our expenses, how are we doing on broadband selling and then the expenses to deliver that service? And in that, if you look at fiscal year 2024, our projection is that we will be negative $1.4 million. The reason we've been able to stay afloat this long is because we've been able to manage our cash flow very well from grants and other sources to be able to negate what might otherwise be a nasty situation for our company.
Then you're commingling monies.
We're not commingling monies. That'd be illegal for us to commingle our monies.
Okay.
But from a cash flow standpoint, how we manage cash is what's important here. So we do not, every grant has its own bank account, it has its own accounting, so we do not commingle funds. But when you have cash, how you manage that cash is what's important. And I'm very blessed to have a very good controller to help us
1
manage
minute.
cash.
So for projecting,
Elisa Hodge, Comptroller.
wait, just to wrap up, because I got 1 minute, and then you go add in. Sorry about that. So to cover where you gave wage increases to your employees,
Yes.
and your projections for 2024 are less in revenues. What kind of miracle we work in there?
That's not a miracle. It's a situation
30 seconds.
during the time. At the
Okay.
time of the increases of wages to the employees, we had secured a grant that had an administration fee on it that would allow us to be able to pay for these increases.
Okay.
That grant was then taken away from VINGN unexpectedly and given to a different agency. Then VINGN
Time.
had these obligations since they were salaries and not bonuses. So we now work for diversifying our revenue streams to be able to pay for that, and we've nearly captured all that revenue back through our diversification of revenue strategies.
Okay, Madam Chair, could you just wrap up with Ms. Hodge? She was going to say, if you don't mind, Ms. Hodge, thank you.
Yes. I wanted to clarify that in the $10.2 million of expenses were some non-cash expenses such as depreciation and amortization.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hodge. I was just about to share that. So your 1.2 red or loss, if you want to call it, what's the depreciation amount that's impacting that?
Depreciation amount projected for 2024 is $4.3 million.
So that's why you're seeing 1.2,
That is correct.
because of the depreciation. But your cash, let's talk cash. So your cash flow, what is your monthly expenses versus your monthly or your, let's just say quarterly for the sake of this discussion. Give it to me the best way you can, based on how you have it, your revenues versus your expenses.
Okay, quarterly revenues are about 1.2 1.4, and expenses less the depreciation.
No, give it to me without depreciation? Yes, okay.
Yes, approximately 2.
You don't have to be exact.
1.2.
1.2? So are you breaking even? That's what you're saying?
The annual expenses were 10.6.
10.6 annual.
If I reduce it by the depreciation of 4.3, excuse me, that gives me 7.3, divided by 4, $1.9, about $2 million.
2 million per
Quarter.
quarter, right? And so you are able to cover your expenses. You're not struggling to cover your expenses.
Yes, we're able to cover our expenses. Of course, we can always do with excess, but we
Okay.
able to manage our expenses.
But you're not for profit, right?
No.
So is it that you need excess dollars for the purposes of maintenance? What's the purpose? Because if you have 1.2, you have an additional $1 million available every month, every quarter.
Well,
Yeah, because you have revenues of 2, on about 2, right? That's what you said.
is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
What did I miss then? I need to understand what I missed.
Okay, let me work on that analysis, and Mr. Adams wanted to say what we would do with excess.
Okay.
So one of the challenges in looking at our financials is the type of business that BINGN is in. Our business is extremely expensive on the capital side. We have a lot of unknown expenses that come up all the time, right? A fiber break. Just recently, we did just to give an example, we had on the south shore of St. Croix, we did a 5-mile cable run. Somebody shot at the cable with a gun. Bullet went through the cable. Miles had to be replaced. Didn't expect it. That's something that we have to come out of. Every month we have things like that. On top of that, we're being pressured to be able to drive down our pricing, but we have the same capital costs as a small city, but we have the population of a community. So our capital cost is constantly straining the company, and the inflows we have recurring revenue that's pretty steady, but now we're in a competitive situation with would-be customers that are now also putting more strain on our network because we don't have enough monies left over to continue to do upgrades to the network.
Okay, I'm going to move to the next senator, but do you have a annual capital budget? Or do you have a 5-year capital budget?
We don't look out, we cannot look out 5 years. We basically go out 12 months.
Okay, an annual capital budget.
Do we have that to show?
We do not have a capital budget per se. Our capital program is really dictated by our FEMA projects, and those have a period of performance of about 3 years.
So are we saying that if we did not experience the hurricanes of 2017, we would have the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network would be in dire straits? Because that's what we're saying. So
yes, there's actually, yes,
well,
absolutely.
this is what I need to understand. So help me to understand this. So an organization such as yours should have a capital budget, and then your revenues, or whatever you're charging for your middle mile, that should be backfilling your capital budget. Yes, we may fall short, but there must be a capital budget because these FEMA dollars are not going to be available to the territory infinitum. And our expectation is that the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network is available to the Virgin Islands infinitum. So how do we balance this? A capital budget is a must. Even if you're utilizing federal funds now, there must be some capital projections at the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network. I have to go to the next senator, though. Go ahead.
May I address that?
Yes.
You're hitting the nail on the head. When I came aboard BINGN, our accounting was a mess. We had no back-end systems. We had no budgets. The only reason that the company existed was because it had $4 million from FEMA in cash, and it used it for operating rather than putting it into the use that it was supposed to be used for. The other thing that has hampered us from day one was that when VINGN was built, the federal government gave VINGN $8 million in operating cash. That cash should still be available to the company to this day, given the burn rate of the company. However, a decision was made by the executive team at the time to build undersea cables between St. Croix and St. Thomas before the feds gave a green light to do so. That cost $8 million.
Okay.
The feds did not reimburse the company for that money, so from day one, the company has been in the red. And we are still trying to overcome that, which is one of the reasons why we also, the bond is like, when the bond first came up, when I first looked at our books, I said, what's this bond? I mean, this loan, no one could explain it. PFA couldn't explain it. VINGN couldn't explain it. We dug deeper and deeper and then found that we have a loan on the books. And it wasn't even recorded on the books. So a lot of what you're talking about, Senator, about fiscal discipline, we are still trying to catch up. So we do not have these budgets that we should have. We've been spending 2 years just have a back-end system that we now have, a NetSuite implementation, warehouse management systems that we're trying to install. We're trying to do a lot of back-end office automation to be able to bring down our cost of the operational cost of the company so that we can then start bringing down pricing for the betterment of the people of the Virgin Islands. So we're still cleaning up a mess that's existed for 10 years.
I'm going to go to the next senator, but I'm very interested in discussing pricing. Senator Fonseca, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and pleasant good morning, good afternoon to the listening audience. We give thanks and praises to the Most High. Blessings. Mr. Stephen Adams and Mrs. Hodge, welcome. I really appreciate your testimony. I think you are doing excellent. I've read through your testimony, and even though it seems like the questions are difficult, it's because the level of information that you have provided to the legislature is very, very, very good. As a matter of fact, I love the way this corporation is being run. So your mission is to provide wholesale open access middle line bandwidth to the ISPS providers over pure fiber network. So that's the segment of the telecommunications where you connect basically to the modem. In other words, you go from the modem back to the major service provider. More or less, that's how it is?
Almost. We provide, we do not provide to the modem, that's the last mile. The internet service providers, known as ISPs, provide that. They are our customers. VINGN has 11 customers, and they're all ISPs in the territory. Some of them where we provide 100% of their service capacity, and others it's in spots.
Okay, so the last mile is like VI Liberty and that
Yes.
group.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
good. I got a question here that I want you to answer, but I'm going to ask Madam Chair's indulgence to answer it on the chair's time because it's going to take a long time and I only have a few minutes. So that question is I want you to discuss in the Virgin Islands, are there any cases to your knowledge where the middle line access, what you do, is being bought or competition by the local access providers, and those in the last mile? Because you mentioned the $84.5 million with USVI Connect grant, so I want to ask your indulgence to explain that on the Madam Chair's time. Okay, I want to question you now, since your mission is to provide a pure fiber network, what is the percentage of homes right now that are still on a coaxial system that are not on the true fiber optic infrastructure?
I do not have that answer, but I can give you some flavor for it. VINGN doesn't keep track of, since we just sell bandwidth, or we call light, we don't track every single instance of it.
Okay, so you don't know.
We don't know, but there are a lot of homes that all of the customers that are of VIA are on a hybrid network.
Okay, so there's a lot of people still not on the pure fiber optic system in the Virgin Islands, yes?
Yes, and that's why you had the FCC had the competition to be able to get everybody onto pure fiber.
Okay, so now I want to ask you now, are there any local controversies with the National Rural Electric Cooperative opposition to pole attachments, tariff changes, etc.? Do we have any of those issues in the Virgin Islands?
Oh, yes, we have issues
We do.
around that. Yes.
Okay, and what are you doing to resolve those issues?
Those aren't VINGN's issues. Those are the issues between the internet service provider and WAPA.
So you're not involved with those?
We're not involved.
Okay, good. So
Or
have you...
influence, and I must say that part.
Okay.
We are not influencing those issues either.
Okay, so do you have open access initiatives such as duct sharing, utility pole sharing, fiber unbundling, and all of those? Have you implemented?
1 minute.
There's a lot to unpack there, but in general, WAPA's conduit is VINGN and WAPA have entered into an MOU, and in that MOU, VINGN has the right to run fiber in any of their communications conduit and on all of their poles. When our fiber is anywhere on the islands, it's available to any ISP
30
at the
seconds.
same price of every other ISP. So anytime VINGN's network is mingled with WAPA, it's available to every single ISP. We cannot deny service to any ISP.
Okay, so now the costs have gone down radically in your industry. How about the pricing reviews? Where are we with that? Are there any price reductions you foresee?
We must bring price reduction to the territory. VINGN, and this is a total candor,
Time.
is that part of the reason why we have high internet pricing in the Virgin Islands is because we have not been able to bring down wholesale pricing. Bottom line. We are working diligently on that by two ways. One, diversifying our revenue streams so that we can subsidize bringing down prices. And secondly, actually right now we've hired an economist to help us look at our pricing schedule so that we can offer relief so we can have pricing comparable to the mainland. But it's going to be extremely difficult.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Adams, Ms. Hodge, I have the utmost confidence in you. And Madam Chair, if I may, if you can answer that question now with the 84.5 million USVI Connect grant and the main, how you're being affected.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you for the insightful questions, because all of those are core to what we are grappling with as we're trying to modernize our company. It's actually trying to make sure that we're relevant in providing value to the ISPs so that we are here for the next 20 years. So there was a competition that was 2 years ago. It's called USVI Connect. There was two competitions. One was in here in the Virgin Islands, and the other was in Puerto Rico. So they have Puerto Rico Connect. These were specialized grants that the FCC had a competition. The competition was won in the U.S. Virgin Islands by Broadband VI. Broadband VI is still VINGN's largest customer. Broadband VI was purchased by Liberty VI. So now Liberty is our biggest customer. However, Liberty's USVI Connect grant requires them to be able to run pure fiber to every single home and business in the territory. That is both a middle mile, which VINGN does, and a last mile, which is the current business. We're in support of this award. We're in support of Liberty, and we are doing everything we can to help them be successful. However, there is a challenge with this grant, and the challenge with this grant is that since it's $84.5 million, it is a capital grant that does not allow for any other infrastructure grants while this grant is active to be awarded to any other entity in the territory. And I'd like to give a clear example of how this grant that Liberty had won, it has nothing to do with Liberty. I'm just using their name because they're the ones that have received the grant. But the impact has been dire for VINGN. Last year, Ms. Hodge and I spent an exorbitant amount of time on a USDA Reconnect grant. It was a grant that was for the Virgin Islands, for the territories, and our share would have been $24 million. No match. $24 million. We worked on this grant for quite a while. The week that the grant was being awarded, USDA contacted us, told us the award was coming, checking bank accounts, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, we got a letter that says we had been disqualified from $24 million. And the reason we were disqualified was because of this duplication rule. Has nothing to do with Liberty. Liberty, it's not their fault. They won fair and square this grant. But what was put into place is that no other infrastructure grants can be used, no other grants in the broadband set-asides can be used for infrastructure in the U.S. Virgin Islands. That also extends to another grant that's in the territory right now. It's a grant called the BEAD grant. I mentioned it in my testimony. It's a $27 million grant that was awarded, that's available to the territory. VINGN initially was the broadband office for that grant. And that's how the management fees off that grant is what we use to be able to increase the pay to be able to retain our talent at the time. NTIA at the time felt that there was a conflict with VINGN not only managing that grant, but also being a potential recipient, and then also using that for infrastructure. So now you have over $50 million that would have went to VINGN to upgrade the network, and none of the monies can be used for that. So the grant was allocated to OMB, which is why OMB is the broadband office, and they're doing the best that they can with that grant. But of the $27 million, not a dime of that money can be used for infrastructure. So now we have over $50 million that could have been to elevate the Virgin Islands, and we have no access to that. So you put that on top of the mismanagement of our company, you can see why we're struggling. And then our population size is not large enough for the expense of our company. We buy it's not like we buy a forklift from time to time, which would be a big expense for some companies. We buy machines that cost $10,000, $100,000. Matter of fact, we've got these things called ASRs, $100,000 machines. We need 3 of them. You know, we buy stuff like that. We have parts of our network that if something falls off the pole in St. Croix, all of St. Thomas is down. The entire island, down. So when we look at capital projects and we look at budgets, it's very hard for us to budget because we have this infrastructure that's with a shrinking population where we cannot amortize out our network costs, and then the government not allowing us to use the funds that are available to every other territory, every other state, except for in the United States Virgin Islands.
So that one has me sitting up straight in my chair. I have to go to the next senator because that was a long explanation, but a very necessary and needed explanation. But the question that I always would beg when I hear of these types of challenges, how do we mitigate these challenges? Well, you are aware of all that you shared today. That is a big issue for the wider population. We continue to hear about the need for our internet services to be cheaper. based on what you just said, that will never happen. We having a pie in the sky dream. And if it does happen, it's not going to happen no time soon. We're not looking forward to something that is realistic unless there is an opportunity, because I don't know, because this is not my area, unless there's an opportunity for us to put our collective heads together to figure out how to mitigate all that you've shared, because you shared with us that all of the other outlying areas of the U.S. territories, the insular areas, they are not impacted in the way that we are.
No,
Correct?
that's correct.
So who's fighting for us? Who is fighting for us on the ground here in the Virgin Islands? I just came from an event at the Virgin Islands Port Authority, and I ran into one of my classmates, and she was talking about the cost of living in the Virgin Islands. And who's fighting for us? If we have a situation like this, how are we going to mitigate the cost of living? We have to have internet service. We have it in our homes, those of us that can truly, in fact, afford it. And it's almost really unaffordable, to tell you the truth. What is the conversation around mitigating this issue? Because I started to ask you about subsidies earlier, but before Senator Fonseca spoke, when you talked about lowering costs, when I said we're going to get back to that, I was coming to you with subsidies. But based on what you just said, we have a bigger issue.
Yes. I'd like to, as you know me, I'm very blunt, but a very thoughtful man. This is, let me address this from honesty right off the bat. What you're discussing is unacceptable. The pricing in the territory is purely unacceptable. It's unacceptable, the pricing that VINGN charges its internet service provider customers, so we will take blame for that. We are doing our darndest to be able to figure out, we cannot mitigate. This is not a mitigation issue because there's not enough population size to mitigate, right? If we're on the state size and we're in the prairies of Kansas, that was a booming suburb that's growing, you can be able to grow that community. You can take this infrastructure and grow with the population. We have a population on a good census day of 87,000 people, and you have 3 network providers who have middle mile networks. Via has a middle mile network that's pure fiber. Liberty bought one from AT&T on the backs of VINGN, and VINGN has one. We do not, since we're a nonprofit and a government entity, we do not have the deep pockets to be able to compete. I assure you that VINGN will be uncompetitive in the next 5 years. However, this is not all doom and gloom. There's tremendous opportunity here. The opportunity that we see is to do 2 things. One is to figure out how do we leverage the network that was invested by the federal government and the people of the Virgin Islands. In my testimony, there is a significant small little paragraph, but it's very significant to this issue. And it's this initiative that is called Diaspora Link. And I'd like to, if Madam Chairman, I can talk about that or I can wait, because that's how we mitigate, because there's a full strategy behind that small paragraph.
You can proceed, and then after you're done, we're going to go to, I think it's very important information, so after that, we're going to go to Senator Belaiden.
Thank you. I'll be brief with this. Diaspora Link is a initiative that I came to with my executive team after looking at the realities of what we're discussing today about our very viability and our purpose. And looking at trying to figure out how we can mitigate and be able to bring the cost structure in place. Shy of cutting our staff in half, which is a mitigation option, but an unrealistic option, there is no other way that operationally we can get the pricing structure down to be acceptable. The only way we can do it is we have to find a new revenue stream altogether. Diaspora Link is an opportunity to do that. Diaspora Link basically is running internet, new internet undersea cables from the cities of Virginia Beach and New York, connect those two cities. They come to St. Croix, they connect the Virgin Islands, and then they go off to Ghana and they go off to Nigeria. Now, on the surface, they may not seem like it's very important, but if you look at the national, if you look at, go back and look at China and this Belt and Road Initiative that they have in China and the American complex not being in Africa, and there's no direct link to the continent of Africa to the United States, we provide a way station. That provides an opportunity for us to have new cables, not only new cables, but new revenue opportunities coming from having those data centers that would be here to relay data between here and Africa. That's new revenue. Those new cables also presents an opportunity for, on the back of government, of federal priorities, for VINGN to be able to provide new value to the territory that doesn't exist today, that we did not have to pay for. That's critical. Shy of something, and the significance of it is that, and you look at Diaspora Link was unanimously approved by the Commerce, Committee of Commerce in the House of Representatives, and then 2 weeks or a month ago was approved on the floor of Congress by our delegate who's been villainized and got that through a Congress that does nothing at the point right now. It shows how significant Diaspora Link is to national security and makes us relevant to the United States of America. That's new opportunity, that's new revenue, that's new prosperity for us. That's where we're going. The broadband market is a race to the bottom, and we can't keep pace. So once Liberty is done with their build, that will be, they and Via will fight it out. There will be always niches for the small ISPs. They will continue to thrive. But our value proposition in this fight is minimal. So we have to find a new battlefield. And that is Diaspora Link for our future, for the territory, not just VINGN, for the territory. That's my complete answer.
Thank you for your response. And I recalled in about 2010, 2011, that was a conversation in the Virgin Islands that from an economic development perspective, from a revenue stream perspective, that was the intent when the whole Next Generation Network came to the Virgin Islands. When the federal government said, these are the dollars that will be made available to you, there was lots of conversation about exactly what you just said. So I'm not sure when we fell off the wagon, but obviously at some point we did fall off the wagon. But I'm very happy to hear that, there is some level of movement, because that was the original intent. It wasn't for this entity to just be out there floating.
Yes, and that's what I inherited. We did
Okay.
not have an intent.
All right, so I recall that very well. Senator Blyden, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to my colleagues, you and listening audiences, staff, central staff. Good afternoon, CEO and President Adams, and your supporting team there, you, Ms. Hart, and thank you so much for your testimony. Interesting conversation. So you're basically saying that last stance is the Diaspora Link.
Yes.
Because I know you stated, when did you come on board?
I came on board October 2019.
2019. Okay. And you spoke to the sum $8 million in cash that you
Yes.
did not know was there, but at the same time that has basically given you some challenges with your operations. You also spoke to some of the challenges when it comes to the duplication rule, the federal rule of duplication funds, that has affected your operation also because you have a large capital budget, you stated. And in respect to the day-to-day operation. You said in terms of VINGN and your longevity, you say you really don't have any concerns as of now. But based on what you have stated, and based on the little due diligence I did in terms of revenues and staying afloat, I know you're not there to make revenues, but in terms of your cash at hand and also the operation, because I know between 2019 and 21, the cash and cash evaluations decreased from 1.48 million to roughly about 550,000. And also, I saw losses of approximately $5 million during this period. So I'm seeing a steady annual decrease in losses. So that's why I was a little concerned in that respect. But let me ask you in respect to the diaspora link. Do you know if the feasibility study on the construction of the infrastructure, do you know when, do you have an idea when that will be done, or is there any plan in that respect?
The bill passed a Republican Congress, which is remarkable. It's now in a Democratic Senate. We expect the passage in the Senate within the next 2 months at the latest, and then off to President Biden for signature. Upon signature, that bill will then authorize NTIA to be able to do a 12-month study on the viability of Diaspora Link. But inside the Diaspora Link, I want to point out something that's not clear on the surface of this bill, but it's tucked into the bill when you read it carefully. Diaspora Link has 3 components. Diaspora Link has fiber running from coast to coast, but it also has an independent power plant, and it also has a data center built into the bill. Don't need to talk much more about the significance of both of those things to the Virgin Islands.
Very well. And you also spoke in terms of your goals and being able to offer more competitive pricing for your ISP partners. But what's the plan? How would you go about doing that, though, within the space?
1 minute.
The way we plan to go at that is that we're conducting a study now. I stand by the statement that I made that VINGN is not in any danger today. I'm talking about danger 3, 4, 5 years from now. Okay. And my job is to be able to make sure that my predecessors actually have a thriving business that is serving the people of the Virgin Islands. So that's an important statement. The way we plan to be able to
30 seconds.
Deal with the pricing is we plan to offer new products that we don't today. Right now, we sell broadband services, which is basically lit services, which is the broadband itself. But we are now looking at licensing our network to the ISPs to give them more independence from us, but at a greater value to the Virgin Islands. So, for instance, we have one of our ISP partners. We sold them, we leased them basically this fiber between St. Croix and St. Thomas under undersea cable because they didn't have it, and they wanted that. We charged millions of dollars for that. That was valuable.
It is.
We plan to be able to do that again, but on the terrestrial network. We believe that that will give us the room to be able to lower prices for everybody because it's a new product that we don't offer today. So we're looking at all of what we have and say, well, we've only been selling 1 of 5 things that we have to sell. Let's sell everything. Everything's for sale. So, and if you want to buy my car, you can buy that too. So everything is for sale to be able to figure out how to buy us time for Diaspora Link or some other type of leverage of our network.
Okay, very well. It's a start anyway, but thank you so much for your responses. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator Blayden. So let's go back to Diaspora Link. So basically, Diaspora Link is to allow NTIA, right? to conduct a feasibility study on the construction of this infrastructure, correct?
Yes.
So are there timelines around this? Are we,
Sorry.
what are we looking forward to?
Okay.
So you do a study. How long is the study anticipated to take? Is there funding attached to this? Once the study's completed, is it that we have to go back and fight again for another HR for the funding to become available so we could move this along? Help me to understand how well we have thought this out.
Okay, we thought it out pretty well.
Okay.
Fantasy, right? Ideal world, if it all works out. We believe that the Senate, we have friends in the Senate who like this bill. We are encouraged that the Senate will pass this bill. We have early indication also that President Biden likes this bill, that it will also be signed. Those are big ifs. So if they do get signed, then the next thing that happens is that immediately NTIA has 12 months to be able to do a feasibility study on the whole bill.
Just for the sake of the community,
Excuse me?
please just share with us what NTIA means.
National Technology Information Administration, I believe. Did I get it right?
National Telecoms and Information Administration.
Okay, that's important.
Alphabet soup.
Okay, go ahead.
So they're controlled by the Commerce Committee. And the Commerce Committee is where NTIA rests. And that's also one of the reasons why Diaspora Link is interesting, because it provides two things for the relationship between the United States mainland and Africa, which is not only economic, but also from a national security standpoint. There is no direct links. So every communication, whether it be military, whether it be commerce, goes through communication cables that could possibly be compromised. End to end, from the mainland to the continent, through the Virgin Islands, the U.S. government stays in control of that link. We do not anticipate that once these bills are passed and the study is completed, we believe the study will come back affirmative. And then once it comes back affirmative, then it's up to Congress to figure out how to fund the results of the study. We do not anticipate that the Virgin Islands will have to be the contributor to this because it's a federal issue.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they need a custodian here in the Virgin Islands. I wrote the white paper for this initiative, and I believe I will carry it all the way through.
All right, so we need to stay on top of this and make sure that this is shepherded through, and pray that the feasibility study comes back feasible.
Yes.
And then we get to the funding conversation.
Yes.
So I don't know what kind of time that is. I know everything takes time, and sometimes I feel like time is forever. So you talked about 5 areas possible areas to support lowering the cost of services, lowering the cost of the middle mile, getting to the last mile. Do you have an action plan around any of those or all of those as to how reachable are these goals?
Yes. So one of them we're actually already finding some early success with, and that was a diversification in our diversification strategy. One of the things that we're trying to do is figure out how we can leverage not only our network but our people domain expertise. Right? We have a particular knowledge in our house that is very unique in the Virgin Islands, which is one of the reasons why we also did these salary increases, is to retain the valuable talent of our staff. One of the things that we've done is we're looking at cloud services. Those are things like hosting of servers and of data, backup, The hospital is one of our customers. Both hospitals are actually customers of VINGN in buying licenses, Microsoft licenses, as well as data backup services. We plan to get further into that business because all it is leveraging existing network capabilities and domain expertise that our staff happens to have. That's one area. We have spent ARPA funds to be able to deploy Wi-Fi extensively throughout the territory, and we're not done yet. Once that's deployed, there represents revenue opportunities through advertising. We plan to monetize our Wi-Fi network in that manner. A third one, as I already spoke about, is licensing dark fiber, which is basically getting fiber strands to our ISP partners and letting them be independent of VINGN. With that also comes number 4, which is using our fiber access points, which are these little huts that you see on the side of the roads. We have 24 of them that house our infrastructure, and those become opportunities for our ISP partners to be able to host their service. And then lastly, what we plan to do, and this is one that's very dear to the whole company. I talked about the digital equity grant, which is a very important grant to the company because it's something that we have interest in to do good for the Virgin Islands, but that also represents revenue opportunities to make the Virgin Islands partially a destination place for cruise ship passengers and people who come here to be able to learn. And we have this idea called Digiplex, which is similar to a model that they have in San Francisco, where you have a center where people go to be able to learn, get hands-on experience with technology. That also not only is that something important to our children, but it's also something that's important to people who are coming off cruise ships and need something to do for their children, right? So those are the 5 things that we're exploring as revenue opportunities to bridge the gap until we have something significant to do a pivot.
Could you give me the first one again?
Oh, I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Cloud services,
Cloud services.
What was it again?
hospitals.
Like cloud services is like when you back up your servers and your data, and that goes into the cloud. Like if you're using Google or SharePoint or any of those types of things, those are cloud services. That's what
Okay,
that is.
just wanted to be clear on that. All right, thank you. Senator, let me first take this opportunity as well to recognize the presence of Senator Giovanni James Sr., member of the committee. Please mark Senator James as present, as well as Senator Novalee Francis, Mr. President, as present. Senator Carrion. Okay, he probably left the room for a second, so we're going to go directly to Senator Javon James. Okay, my apologies. Senator Novalee Francis.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you, my colleagues. Good afternoon to the testifiers from VINGN, CEOs Adams and Controller Hodge. Thank you for your testimony today. And you said a mouthful, and you talk about being in the perfect world. But the reality is that, and you also talk extensively about the costs of internet service here in the Virgin Islands. But you know what? It wouldn't be so difficult for us to pay for the damn thing if it worked. Right? I think the problem that we find ourselves in a lot of times is the fact that, there's this cost. However, the service is not matching up to the cost of it. I juggle 3 service providers at my home just to be able to make it work. I have a responsibility. You do your businesses, you want surveillance, you have to be accessible and available. Not that I could afford it hurting me, but I need to be available, I need to be accessible. So I have to make the sacrifice to make that happen. And if we don't get it right, people will continue to come and eat our lunch. Elon Musk is out there, and Starlink is the latest thing now that they're saying is somewhat of a savior for what we're experiencing. So we truly have to put our heads together, because while we're fighting here among ourselves, between the VIA, the Liberty, the VIGN, and all of these entities, others are now able to infiltrate and be able to get the services here. So at some point, I know that there have been some collaboration, some synergy, and you talk about your partners, and I'm hoping that at some point we could really start to hunker down and make this thing work. I wanted to ask you, I know that there was an initiative by the governor to make sure that there's Wi-Fi accessibility throughout the territory. Where are we with that?
So, thank you, Senator. That's one of our brightest points is Governor Bryan's initiative for ubiquitous Wi-Fi in the territory. That is a program that's been funded under the ARPA program, and that was a $10.8 million grant that was awarded to us, and we have expended $5.4 million of that. We have deployed 95 hotspots throughout the territory. The latest one that we've completed has been the airport. Both airports are now complete. Most public spaces are complete. Now we're actually going into small little places to fill in the gaps. And I would say we're 80% complete with that project of deploying Wi-Fi throughout. By the time we're done, we should have well over 100 spots that will be free for residents in the Virgin Islands.
So again, I believe that there's some opportunity for us to market this and be able to advise the public, but to ensure that it works. I was at the airport this morning and had to turn off my Wi-Fi in order to be able to get my emails and check even the...
VINGN's Wi-Fi?
I had to turn off whatever is at the airport, is the public access Wi-Fi there, and I had to actually turn off my Wi-Fi on my phone and being able to access, and we went to LTE, went to 5G, I went to all kind of things, and eventually, there's for me to be able to get my emails and be able to send emails. Okay. So I think that it's important that we market these areas because it is important. We don't have a lot of people that's able to afford all of this internet service, and it's unfortunate. And I think that it's important that we're able to maximize. You said 95 hotspots. That's
1
excellent,
minute.
but we need to know where those are real quickly. I'm happy that you spoke about the diaspora link. I think that is something that I've read up on, and I think that there's some opportunities there. I fully support that if we get it working, if we could really get it put in place and get it functional. In respect to, you talk about the $67.5 million, and that was our money at the time?
The $67 million
30 seconds.
was federal monies.
That was under ARA? That was under American Reinvestment?
Yes, that was under ARA.
Back then?
Yes.
Was there a requirement for a match? How did the $36 million come involved in that discussion?
There was a match requirement.
And the $36 million was the match for the 67?
That and then also I don't have all the insight, Senator, on that particular one. I know part of that was for the match, and then part of it was also part of the build requirements. I don't have all the insight on that one. Okay,
I'll move on from that.
Time.
Quickly, in terms of the revenues that you spoke about and your average between $4.9 and $5 million in revenues, is that solely from collection of the middle mile, or there's other initiative VINGN has undertaken to be able to be creative and innovative with more revenue collection?
90% of that, 95% of that is broadband, so middle mile. However, our goal as a company is to be able to increase revenue with diversification strategies in the coming months and years.
Okay, and finally, in respect to what we're encountering here in the Virgin Islands with Liberty, I heard that you mentioned that you certainly embrace and support the Liberty initiatives, but you know that this body just recently asked for the FCC to conduct an investigation and an analysis of what's transpiring here with our Liberty concerns and issues with the fallouts and the outages and different things that we're having. What is your professional, if you have one, opinion about this, and how can we really step up our game, because Liberty is really presenting some challenges for this community? How do you believe, or you will be your recommendation that we expeditiously address the Liberty issue?
Well, I want to be clear that VINGN 100% supports Liberty. We support VIA. We support all of our ISP partners. Liberty's challenge is a unique one to the territory. However, I would caution the territory to be a little bit more patient because what they have undertaken is more than a mouthful. And it's taken them a little bit more time to digest. The good news about Liberty and the performance that we're witnessing in the territory is that it can all be solved through technology. They have not done any technology misstep. It's just taking them time. And I would urge us to be patient. And another reason why I'm urging us to be patient is because the federal government has invested $86 million into this. Once they're done with it, that's what we've got. That's what we're going to have for a generation. So we can beat them up on the front end and have high expectations, and we should have expectations and hold their feet to the fire. But at the same time, that is, for the next generation, Liberty is it, from fiber to the home. Now, mobile is a totally different thing. And what I've heard, I've been in Senate hearings next to my counterparts of Liberty and Via, and they're taking it on the chin on the mobile side, as they should, right? They need to improve customer service. It's a customer service issue. But fiber to the home is a different animal altogether, and I believe that they're on the right track to making that happen.
Very well, thank you for your responses. My time has been called, but life is at stake when we're dealing with connectivity, and not having connectivity becomes an issue for us. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator Francis. So I heard your plea with regards to the asking the community to be patient. However, I think our primary concern in the territory is on the mobile side. See, I have a mother that is 91 years old, and I need to reach her, and I can't. So that might sound good, but that's a very tough pill for us to swallow. Yeah. So we know that they took over the AT&T network, but it just seems like we have other challenges with software. Yeah. Something is going on there, and I'm not an IT person, but sometimes I spend time thinking about what this could possibly be. Yeah. And it seemed like they have some software challenges because we worked very well with the AT&T network. So if we work very well with the AT&T network, then it means that the infrastructure isn't the issue. There is something else. So it seems like they have a software challenge.
You actually hit it right on the head.
Listen, I've been staying up at night thinking about this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So do I. But it is software. You know, they're challenged, and software migrations in any corporation is extremely challenging. And it's even more challenging when you put tens of thousands of people on a network and try to keep them up while you're doing a software upgrade and migration. Migrations are even harder than an upgrade. So I'm a customer too, right? I have two phones, right? I have an AT&T phone and I have a Via phone, and I curse them both all the time. They might go home to Oakland and it's like, oh gosh, Nirvana.
So I'm also becoming a little concerned because we have a lot of Virgin Islanders now moving over to. We have a new, what's the other one?
T-Mobile.
T-Mobile. That's here in the territory. I pray that T-Mobile can, as people move over, that in fact T-Mobile is preparing themselves to withstand the load, the capacity. Do they have the capacity? There's a lot of things we have to think about. So as those transitions take place, we have to think about, I hope these companies are thinking about exactly what's happening here in the territory.
But there's one thing that T-Mobile has that the other two don't, that we have legacy issues with. And this is very important with T-Mobile and Sprint, is that both of those companies come in here and they only have one product to sell. It's mobile cellular service. When you look at Via, when you look at Liberty, they have the dual service of the same network to manage both mobile and land communications. And that inherently is a big challenge. And that's where they're getting tripped up, both of them, right? Both companies have tremendous issues with this. VINGN's role at the tower level is like, at some towers we support BIT at the tower level, but beyond that we do not support Liberty, or actually, no, I take that back. We do provide some tower support, but not thoroughly throughout the territory.
Okay. So just going back quickly to Senator Francis, Mr. President's question with regards to the hotspots. How many hotspots did you say you have territory-wide?
We have about 95 hotspots, but we have probably close to 200 access points.
Okay, so
And the difference between those is like at Cramer's Park is one hotspot, but there's 5 antennas there, each one of them to make the whole park available, or access points. So even though Cramer's Park on our map shows as one hotspot, there's 5 access points inside Cramer's Park. There's a lot of places like that. All of the public housing facilities are counted, each housing facility is counted as one spot, but there's multiple antennas throughout the housing facilities. Once we get done with our initial deployment, we will come back to public housing and put even more antennas in public housing.
and are we collecting any data?
Yes, we're collecting a lot of data.
What type of data?
Things like at the airport on any one day, we'll have 2,000 people on our network on Wi-Fi. We have, I think the peak I saw was like maybe 18,000 people a day on our Wi-Fi network. That's something we didn't exist this time last year.
Yeah, but when I say data, I mean like, so are you partnering with the government to, like, as you sign on to the network, there are certain things that we need to know about?
We plan to do that. We plan
You know what I mean, right?
Yes, I do, and we plan to do that next. I think when it came home to me when I was sitting at the seaplane a couple of weeks ago, and a young man from the housing facility close by walked over, put his boombox down, opened up his laptop, and started doing schoolwork at a chair at the Seabourn Airlines, which tells me he doesn't have it at home. That's the value of this Wi-Fi network and why we're going to expand it even further to be able to help young men like that. But more importantly, that young man should not be able to leave his home. He should have it in his home. And that's what we're working on as well. So as VINGN transitions over time, the one thing that we will always do is to make sure that the vulnerable community of the Virgin Islands has internet access. We don't know about those of us who can pay for it. We may moan and complain about this or that, but if we can only do one thing and make sure that the vulnerable community has access as close to free as possible, we will have done our job. We will have created value, I believe, for the Virgin Islands.
And how is that being subsidized?
That is being subsidized, like, for instance, like our Wi-Fi. So when we run Wi-Fi into a public housing, when VIGN was built, there was these things called CAIs, Community Anchor Institutions, right? Every single government entity, this building, is a CAI. So our fiber comes here. Your service is all dependent on the last mile, whoever provides you service, right? If we were providing you service, it'd be lightning fast, but we don't. But at public housing, we said, okay, our fiber is there. What can we do with it? Let's put Wi-Fi on top of it. That's the first thing. Once it's there, now we can come back later and say, can we run fiber to every unit in public housing? And we're actually doing a test like that right now at Marley Homes in St. Croix, where we've run fiber there. We already have hotspots there. We're working with one of the smaller ISPs to do a pilot project to run fiber into every unit and then charge $30 for 100 megs. That doesn't exist in the territory. If that project proves well, we will open that up to the other ISPs, and that's how we'll make sure that part of our vulnerable community has access at an affordable rate. That's what we're doing. And we're not looking for a new grant for that. We're paying for that so that particular one, the Marley Homes in particular, it's like, okay, we paid for that out of operating cash. So I went to Elisa and said, please give me this money. She said, okay. She gave me money. I said, okay, we invested in this equipment. We're doing this deployment there. We're testing not only the technology, but also upskilling our workforce to be able to support that type of technology. If it works in VHA, in one VHA installation, it'll work in all of VHA installations. And then once we go to more VHA installations and put put fiber to the home there, and it's $30, what do you think is going to happen to the marketplace when people in public housing are getting internet services at 100 megs up and down for $30, yet you live up in the hills and you're paying $200 for the same service? That's market competition, and it's going to drive the prices down, we hope. That's that's how we leverage our network to help influence pricing where we can't on a cost basis.
That's the one. Okay. Okay. So,
We're doing that now.
Yeah. How long is the study? How long is the
We've started
pilot?
The pilot is ongoing. We've started the design works is in the works. All the equipment's been ordered. All the equipment is on island. We've been working with VHA. We've been working with the ISP partner on this. We hope to have the deployment by June.
Okay. So, and then there's a testing period to.
No, it's either going to work or it's not.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right out the bat.
And just let me just ask you, just for that community alone, what was the associated cost?
The associated cost, as I recall, was something like $50,000 there or take, $50,000 for that community.
And how large is that community, do you know?
That has 90, I think altogether about 90 units.
Okay, so that's a small.
But it's small, but it's actually the hardest of all of them.
Okay.
Because they have these independent units, right? When you go into the larger the facility, the easier it is. So the ones where there's big blocks, those ones are very easy because you're not running fiber to every single building.
Right. So I asked the question, and I'm going to move on to the next senator. The next senator is Senator. Oh no, I think Senator Biden has a point, but I asked that question. So I'm going to go to the point. But I asked that question because, as you do your work in the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network organization, I know that you're of the belief that you're funded 100% by your revenues and support from the Public Finance Authority. But if a matter of this magnitude impacts our community, as a legislature, we have a responsibility to figure out how we can provide support. So please remember that the legislature is here. Let the legislature tell you no if there is a need that would mitigate what we are experiencing right now as you do this testing and as you do this work. I mean, we give each year in our budget, we give nonprofit organizations millions of dollars as we add it up. So if this is something that's going to drive down the cost of internet service in our housing communities, we have a responsibility to buy into this.
I thank you, and I appreciate that. Next time I appear before you, we will have something.
Okay, but I'm just saying, I'm saying that this is critical and important to our community.
I hear.
We have to look at all of the available funding. We have CDBG dollars. We have all kind of money in this territory. And if we're talking about reducing the our inflation and making services available to our people, then we have to fight. We have to fight. We have to be the voice to say this is what we want to see. We have to beat the drum. That's our responsibility in this institution.
Understood.
So I just want to make sure I put that out there.
Understood.
Okay?
Understood. Understood.
Senator Blyden, you're recognized for your point of inquiry. Information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. CEO Adams, I'm glad you went there because my interpretation was that all of the housing communities did have connectivity. And knowing that you are coming here today, my team went out again. Fiber, that's what I'm talking about. And the speed. And knowing that you are coming here today, my team went out and did some tests in all of the different housing communities, and most of them do not have any connectivity at all. And we found in some cases that the speed of the anchor communities was 10 megabytes. And I know in 2015, the FCC standard was 25, I believe, at that time. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I can. It's important to truly understand what the middle mile is, because I think that's the part that trips a lot of people up. So the middle mile is that big pipe, like, if it was a pipe, it's a big pipe like this. Every housing community has a big pipe. It can take 10,000 gallons of water, just an analogy. So every housing community has 10,000 gallons of water that can be delivered to it per second. But then when the ISP, depending on the price that they pay for broadband, they'll give you a straw and give you 10 gallons of water through that straw. But the capability is 10,000 gallons. This building is a classic example of that. This building doesn't have every single building that every CAI that has VINGN fiber has the capability of 1 gig. Every single one. But if you're not getting 1 gig, it's because of the service contract that you have. And the service contract is driven by cost. And now it comes back to VINGN and it's like, okay, I want to buy a gig circuit. Oh, it costs that much? I can't afford that. I'll buy 100 gigs and then 100 megs, and then I'll split it with the building next door, and then they're only getting 10. That's how the end mile works. So we have to fix that. We meaning VINGN, right?
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Bladen. Senator James Sr., you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Greetings to the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. On page 5 of your testimony, you mentioned that you had several PFA and VINGN board meetings discussing the interest rate and other things pertaining to the 36.8 million bond. When was the last meeting with PFA and VINGN regarding this discussion?
This discussion or my presence at both those meetings? Because there was a PFA meeting.
Stop right there, hold on. If you want to follow along with the conversation, page 5, key areas of concern. You said, this matter has been discussed at several PFA and VINGN board meetings regarding the $36.8 million bond. So my question to you, when last was this discussed?
Okay. It doesn't be, the reason why I asked for that delineation or distinction is because I had a PFA meeting yesterday, but it was not discussed at that meeting. The last time that I recall it was discussed is most likely December of last year in a VINGN meeting, and it's just noted. Most meetings, I bring it up.
Stop right there. If I ask you for extra information, I just want to know when last it was discussed. Thank you. And then you said this matter, up to this date, no interest rate has not been determined and an amortization schedule has not been established. So in December, was that discussed? Or were those two things discussed? The interest rate? When last you had that discussion at a PFA and VINGN board meeting?
It has not directly been discussed, the interest or amortization. Ms. Hodge speaks about it at the audit level.
Because you said today the interest rate has not been determined.
Yes.
So I'm assuming, and it's not good to assume, but I'm assuming that it was discussed. But you're saying, go ahead, Ms. Hodge, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, I just wanted to mention, in addition to mentioning the issue at board meetings, I also communicate directly with the PFA staff, the comptroller there, and follow up periodically regarding this particular matter about the interest rate and the amortization schedule, and it was to be discussed at a PFA meeting, not necessarily the ones that we attend, but they meet outside of the subsidiaries, and so I keep, I follow up periodically about that.
What I'm looking at is the sense of urgency, knowing that the governor is among the conversation. That's what I'm looking at, the sense of urgency. Hold on, if I didn't ask anything, don't respond. I'm talking. You're going to talk.
1 minute.
The reason why I'm asking these questions is because I just need to know how important it is, or how urgent it is when it comes to these stakeholders. But I will let you proceed. Go ahead.
It's important to Governor Bryan. Governor Bryan has raised the issue. He's the one that set the priority. I don't have insight into the PFA meetings and executive session about what they plan to do with it. Ms. Hodge and I do keep it on the plate as something that needs to be addressed.
So my question to you, you said the PFA
30 seconds.
directed you all to explore federal grant opportunities. When they directed you all to do so? When that conversation took place?
Senator, I don't recall, but it was last year, earlier in the year, when we had conversations with USDA, because we followed up on what we were directed to do.
Okay, understood. And as far as this whole $36.8 million,
1 minute.
I was able to look at page 9, which is the statement of net position. I saw where you have $18 million invested in capital assets, $1 million unrestricted, and then the $36 million for the PFA. Can you just go into a little details about the $18 million invested in capital assets? And what are the return of investment? What are the return of investments for those?
Okay. The investment in capital assets would be the comparison of our capital assets on the asset portion. Let's take...
Let me make it easier. Through the chair, I'd like to request those documents. We have $18 million invested in capital assets. That's right there in the statement of net position.
Time.
I would just like to have an idea of those capital assets, and if you could just, because I was trying to beat time. It's not a matter of being rude, but as far as the return on investment, can you speak on the return on investment, Madam Chair, please?
I'm not able to speak on the return of investment because I don't have that ratio calculated, but that particular amount is the difference between our capital assets, meaning our fixed assets, and our loan to the PFA, our long-term debt.
Yes, in the essence of time, Madam Chair, I'd also like to request documentation of them, breaking down that $18 million in invested capital assets, and for them to show us our return on investments when it comes to those capital assets. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
So your capital assets is basically the infrastructure that's out.
That is correct. It consists of our fiber, our FAPs, facility access points, and so forth.
Okay, so I found, we weren't able to get a PFA, but we found a article, actually I don't see the date on it. If this in Thomas, the source, it's not dated, but it's somewhere about 2010, 2011, that speaks to the fact that the government has pulled in nearly $70 million in federal economic stimulus grant funding it says, despite senators' lingering objections over the government's broadband financing bill, it appears the two sides might still be able to come to a middle ground on the $170 million Middle Mile project. The government has pulled in nearly $70 million in federal economic stimulus grant funding to pay the various components of the project, which has twice failed to pass muster. So we're the only ones that vote stuff down, okay? Has twice failed to pass muster with the Senate, which authorizes the issuance of up to $42.5 million in gross receipt tax bonds to cover the required local match. So that amount is a local match. So there is some interest associated with it, because now, what was that number that you gave us earlier? 70, how much million?
67.5.
67.5, right?
In the federal grants.
But then it went, no, for the amounts that's on the books.
36.8.
Oh, it's 36.
For the PFA loan.
Okay, so it's 36.8, so it's going down. That's what it is. So, yeah, so the grant, or the bond rather, that was issued was somewhere about $42.5 million, okay? So we looked through it. So there's a lot of different variables at the time. This was what legislature? That's when Senator Sean Malone, and he said, he spoke to Senator Dow, who sponsored the amendment. So that's, it's gross receipt bonds. So we actually, every year, like I said earlier, when we move our budget, we have to set it, before we do anything, we have to make sure that those bond debt dollars are shaved off. And I think that particular bond debt is like $3.5 million per, $3.5 million per year, or I think that based on what it says here. So we have to do a little more research on it, but we're going to get to the bottom of it. But you're saying that out the gate that you are unable to pay this debt. But I'll tell you, what is the VINGN considered a what organization?
Of the PFA, or solely owned subsidiary of the PFA?
A subsidiary of the Virgin Islands Public Finance Authority. And I know that it was never the intent. That happened in what, 2011? We're in 2023. How much years that is? 13 years? So it was never the intent for this debt to still be sitting on the responsibility of the legislature to appropriate, because what's happening is as we build those debts and then we're unable to balance them out, then we have to cut our budgets to accommodate those debts. So we have to have you've laid out for us today, and the purpose of this meeting, we have other committees that will discuss all of the other great things that you all are doing. But for me, I'm looking at the financials. So you've laid out five potential revenue generating ideas for the Public Finance Authority. And if we are serious about standing up the organization, absent of the what's the name of it again?
Diaspora Link?
The Diaspora Link, absent of the Diaspora Link, because that's going to take time for this study to be conducted, then we have to get ourselves involved. So I don't want you to be a stranger to, or I don't want you to make us a stranger to the work that you're doing, because we have to also provide assistance to make sure that we are balancing our budget and being able to provide the resources or the services to our community. And if we are able to shave off that $3.5 million, it says that we have $3.5 million more that we can put towards our hospitals, our education, our infrastructure, our roads. So these are things that we have to really contemplate. So I think what happens to us a lot of times is we operate in silos. Mm-hmm. And because we're siloing, we're not aware that this is something that's potentially very possible, available to us if we put our collective heads together and work on it, then to assist you with getting more revenue so you can stand up your organization, so you won't have to be so reliant on us paying that debt every year.
Yeah, if we didn't have that debt.
Yeah.
Had that in operating cash every year.
So I'm just saying, these are things that we have to marry these things so we could understand how we're going to lay them out and make it make sense for us so we could provide services. We struggle here on this side of the aisle. So I don't know if, okay, there's a point of information from Senator Novell Francis Jr. and then one from Senator James. Senator Francis, you're recognized for your point of information.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just real quickly, I know that you mentioned on page 2 of your testimony that you receive, or you're the recipient of several grants, and I know some of that is accounted on your spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet here, but can you put on record those categories that you have mentioned, FEMA, ARPA, the National Telecommunication and Information Administration, as well as the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. If you could just put on record how much each of those grants represent?
Okay. In looking at the totals, as far as obligated for FEMA as a category, we have $20.7 million have been obligated thus far.
Right.
under the ARPA grant, which is managed through.
And what's the, if you could just speak to what's remaining from that as well, while you break them down.
Oh, okay. And so what's remaining is that they're out of the 90%, until the cost share is still being negotiated with ODR, is 19.3 million. We've expended and invoiced $3.3 million, and we have requested reimbursements of $2.7 million. One of the things with FEMA that's important to note is that our cash flow is determinant of how we address and when we address particular projects, because all these projects are on reimbursement basis. Okay. The next category of grants are the ARPA grants managed out of OMB. We were awarded $10.7 million, 90% cost share, which is $6.4 million. We've expended $5.7 million, and we've requested reimbursements of $5.7 million, basically half the grant. Okay. The last two categories, one are direct with with federal partners. First one with FCC is $250,000. We have about $34,000 left in that grant. And then the digital equity planning grant is $150,000. And of that grant, we have about $96,000 left in that grant.
Okay. And is there any other grant that you applied for and is pending at this time?
That we've applied for?
Yeah.
We will be applying for the digital equity capacity grant, which is basically the execution of the plan that we had submitted to NTIA, and that's a $2.1 million grant. And at this time, all the grants that are available, do not qualify because of duplication.
Okay. Thank you very much. You said in testimony as well as you have a separate account for each of these grants, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Very well. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Senator James, you recognize for your point of information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a point of inquiry, it's basically something I wanted to ask in my last line of questioning. Earlier, the chair of this committee asked about the collecting of data. You never said yes or no, so I will ask the question again. Are you collecting data, and what are you doing with this data, and is there a monetary gain within VINGN by the entity collecting the data?
We collect...
The first question is a yes or no question. Are you collecting data, yes or no?
Yes.
What are you doing with the data, and is there a monetary gain or profit from the collection of data?
We're doing nothing with the data.
So okay. So when the chair asks a question, you dodge it. And I just want to make sure that we have it clear on the record that there isn't anything, so the public will not be under the impression that data is being collected and things are being done with it. Hence why I'm asking this question. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator James. So let's just go quickly. We're going to do a rapid round. We're going to just allow all the senators to ask one question before we wrap up. But let me ask you, I note that your audits are behind. And I know that many of the entities, their audits are behind because of COVID. Now, I'm not sure if that's why your audits are behind, but your last audit was conducted or completed. Your last completed audit was for fiscal year 2021, and you're currently in the middle of your 2022 audit. So we really don't have a good picture of where you are now. And then you are in the process of preparing for your 23 audit. So when do you intend to complete so you said May 31st? So it's already ready to be completed?
Yes, we had our follow-up kickoff meeting, and BDO has shared with us that they are aiming for May 31st. But it's important to note that the audits are done in conjunction with the PFA and the other subsidiaries. So even if VINGN, for example, in the fiscal year 2021, we were the first subsidiary to be issued, they have to wait for the others as well before they move on to the next fiscal year.
Okay, so you're dealing with the whole overall central government audit program. So that's why you're behind. I get it.
In part,
In
yes.
part, yeah, I see. Okay, so
I did want to follow up on the question you asked me previously. Yes, thank you for the question and for the clarification.
just make sure you say what the question was.
Yes, I misunderstood what you were asking. You had asked in terms of our quarterly revenues, the information I provided was annual, but you wanted to know on a quarterly basis what our revenues are projected to be and what our expenditures were projected to be and what was the deficit or the surplus. So I was able to calculate that, and for our revenue projections, we have $1.3 million in revenues, and for our expenses less depreciation expense, it was 1.6, a deficit of 0.3 or 300,000. I wanted to explain that in terms of with VINGN, we have other unrestricted cash, so to speak, that we receive that's not reflected in operating revenues, like our reimbursements from FEMA. We've had some cash paid upfront for some of our ISP services that we will amortize over the life of those contracts. So it's a little bit nuanced to kind of explain, well, where's the cash coming from? But that's basically, where it is coming from. So even though it may look like a deficit, there's other cash from different receivables. As you can see, we do have some grants receivables, and we have some other grants that we would get reimbursements for some of our staff and things like that.
So all those sit in your restricted, all of your reimbursements sit in your restricted until your...
The reimbursements are unrestricted because we have expended our money 100%, and so when it's reimbursed to us, then we can...
So what is your restricted? What's restricted? You have. I saw on your statement of one of these accounts.
The unrestricted is the calculation of the current assets and the current liabilities.
So do you have a restricted cash account where you put rainy day funds, or
we would consider
that there's a policy around that?
We would consider the grants as restricted. For example, we explain that each grant has its own bank account. For example, the digital equity has its own bank account, and so on and so forth. So those funds are only used for the purpose of which they're intended.
Okay, but you don't have any a policy at VINGN where you set aside X number of dollars annually to address what Director CEO Adams shared about unexpected challenges with your equipment?
No, we try to build up our cash reserves for those instances, but we don't have like a rainy day fund, so to speak, if that's what you're asking. No, but we intend to establish that in the future.
Okay. I see Senator Carrion. So, Senator Carrion, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Good afternoon to all my colleagues, people of the Virgin Islands, and to the testifiers that are before us today. Quickly, want to jump into some of the questions that I have. One of them, and please, I do apologize if it was asked and answered as I was in an important meeting. You did mention about the diaspora link with the U.S. Through us, to Africa. Can you kindly share with us a little bit what would that mean for us as a territory, the benefits from it, if it's passed and funding is done? Funding is provided, sorry.
Thank you for the question, Senator. The benefit to the Virgin Islands is quite simply that the Virgin Islands would be relevant to the mainland as a strategic location in the communications and infrastructure between the continent of Africa and the U.S. mainland. That's the main benefit. The secondary benefit to us from a broadband perspective is that you have modern equipment now being laid between the United States Virgin Islands and the mainland that the Virgin Islands did not have to pay for. So we basically run piggyback on this infrastructure that the feds had laid for us, which then brings down our cost structure. And then third and lastly is that the infrastructure that would be placed in territory to support the connection between the two continents would be new job opportunities in the Virgin Islands and new revenue opportunities in the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And with regards to, you presented the issue with 84.5 million, the USVI Connect grant that VNGN lost, right? So broadband VI Liberty was awarded. Do you foresee broadband being able to fulfill their requirements under this grant compliance form, or how, what are you seeing in regards to this?
I believe, well, first of all, VINGN did not compete in that grant. It was for the private sector, so we could not compete for this grant opportunity. However, we supported broadband VI in their application process. At the time, once broadband VI won that grant, VINGN would have built out the entire network on the back of our own network, which would have benefited the territory in much lower prices. Liberty VI purchased broadband VI, and once they purchased it, they decided that they wanted to have a network that was independent of VINGN, which basically cut us out of the loop. That being said, I have confidence that Liberty VI will deliver what they're supposed to deliver under the mandates of their grant.
But I'm glad to hear that you have confidence. So that really helps us here a little bit also to build some of that confidence. Now let's go a little bit to your structured. You said you have 26 highly credentialed, skilled employees. Can you just provide a breakdown per district?
1 minute.
We have 13 employees in both St. Croix and St. Thomas District.
13?
13 in each district?
13.
District, okay. And I saw you gave your employees a maybe much needed raise increase. I know the last one VIGN provided was in 2016, and it was a 3%. What percentage
30
increase
seconds.
you provided this time?
This time, the average percent was around 8%.
8% increase. So what's your total personnel operating costs?
Yeah. Just one moment, Senator. You speak up.
In 2024 fiscal year, it's projected to be 2.9 million, and this includes payroll taxes.
Go ahead. Go on.
Okay, 2.9 million. Very well. My time has been called. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You have another question, Senator?
Yeah, with regards to the revenue projections, well, one, with regards to the audit, I had a question if there was any finding for the last audit that you had.
Our audits had no findings. We had one recommendation in terms of the recognition of revenue for grants. And that was a little bit before my tenure, but that was a matter in terms of when do you recognize grant revenues? And it was not when it's obligated, but it was actually when it's expended and reimbursed. So we found that correction on our own. However, the auditors made a note of it.
That was the only findings.
Yes, and it was more of a recommendation, not a finding, so to speak.
Very well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So you're subject to the single audit?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And under the single audit findings, they gave you one recommendation?
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So colleagues, we're going to go to a quick one question. We're going to keep this to 1 minute. Please, we're going to start with Senator Fonseca. Recognize the mic of Senator Fonseca, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Real quickly, Mr. Adams. Okay, so you mentioned that your cables are on the bottom of the ocean, basically. I want to ask you specifically, between St. Thomas and St. Croix, does your cable go to the bottom of the ocean? And then one other thing I wanted to do. Basically, after 2030, right, the federal duplication rules expire. So there should be some additional federal broadband dollars available to you. So basically from now till 2030 is your bad time, and after 2030, it'll be better for you. Is that what you're saying? So can you just answer those two quick questions, the cable depth and 2030?
Okay, the first one is really easy. The cable runs along the sea floor until it hits the trench between St. Croix and St. Thomas, and then
30 seconds.
Then it does a U because it's too deep to go all the way down and then come back up. It costs too much. For the second question, for 2030, we can't wait that long for the feds to be able to then say, oh, you got a green light to get money again. By then, we will be onto something else. By then, we will be looking at opportunities for whatever is available from the NTIA and FCC at that time. What is our business model then, and how do we fit into those business model opportunities?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Senator Blyden, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. CEO Adams, you spoke in your testimony to a follow-up notice of funding opportunity of $2.1 million, and you say you're going to apply for it by July 31st of this year. We're in the middle of April. What the time frame you plan to apply for this grant, because it's important in terms of the funding for?
Okay, the digital equity grant or planning grant for the territory was published in March 28th, and the comment period is now into the 28th of this month.
30 seconds.
We plan to immediately apply for the capacity grant. The states have until May 31st. All the territories have until July 31st. We intend to beat the states.
Very well. Thank you for that. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Senator Noel Francis, Jr.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just real quickly, CEO Adams, do you have a strategic plan? And if you could just speak to some of your goals, objectives, deliverables, if you will, in regards to what your expectations are for 2024.
For 2024, our strategic plan is to be able to realign the pricing of VINGN's wholesale price for our ISP partners. From an infrastructure standpoint, we are upgrading our ring from 10 gigs to 100 gigs to increase bandwidth in the territory, to also provide resiliency. And then our last one is to be able to look at diversified revenue streams to be able to stave off what I have painted today as a challenging picture. Oh, there's one more. Ms. Hodge has reminded me. And because it's so funny that I'd forget this one, because I drone it into the executive team every week, is that to complete all of our FEMA work. this year.
Thank you, Senator Francis Jr. Well, where there are challenges, there are definitely blessings and opportunities.
Yes.
I just see it over and over because as I sit here, I just ask myself, but for, and I ask it in, this is not the only instance I ask it in, but for the hurricanes of 2017 and but for COVID-19, I'm not certain where we would be. And let's just keep it to this particular conversation. It seemed like absent of the dollars from our federal partners, particularly the FEMA dollars, you would be going south fast.
Mm-hmm.
You would have already been south, actually. So I'm still of the same position. We need to figure out exactly how do we, I mean, you said that it's one of your strategic goals to reduce the middle mile
Pricing.
pricing. Let me ask you, I know that in entities of this nature, when there's a, what are you? You're the CEO, right?
Yes.
The CEO. So when we hire a CEO of an organization, their deliverables, does your contract come with specific deliverables with regards to what we want to see for the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network in the future?
My contract does not provide specific milestones, deliverables that are performance-based. What my contract calls for is to be able to deliver on the mission of the company. What I bring to the table, why I believe I'm the best CEO for this job.
That ain't a question for me.
Huh?
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, okay.
That is not a question for me. I know that you're good. That's not a question for me. I just want to understand, for me, an entity of this nature, if we have, if we're signing on a contract for a CEO,
I'm sorry.
there must be deliverables. So, again, we have a lot of missed opportunities in the Virgin Islands. I mean, you're working towards what you're working towards because you're passionate about this, but we may have gotten somebody else who just feels like, well, this is a mission and a vision, so this is it. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
That is concerning. That's concerning. So I hope that the board members are listening. That is an important component to a high-level agreement with a CEO for organization of this nature. Okay? Of course, the government have to provide the necessary supports to make it happen. So it'll make you come and say, hey, guys, I need to get this, because... See what I'm saying? Yeah. Because as long as I've sat here, I don't recall you ever saying to the legislature, look, I need X or Y so I can get Z done. I don't recall. Because we haven't given it to you. Yeah. All right, Senator James. You reckon? Oh, before we move forward, I see that we have non-committee members, Senator Carla Joseph. Carla Joseph, we've exhausted our round, so we are now at a rapid round for 1 minute. Senator Javon James, your 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I myself been here for 6 years, approximately 6 years, and I don't recall a conversation as well. So, and we are very generous, sometimes too generous, and then we still get a kick in the butt. By the end of the day, my question to you is, on the topic of revenue, you said in 2023 certain ISPs discontinued services, hence why you are seeing a net revenue decline. Just for transparency and for us to understand.
30 seconds.
Who are those ISPs who discontinue services?
Our master service agreement doesn't allow us to say
Okay.
what.
Thank you. Can I say?
ISP.
No problem. All right. And then as far as the cloud services, I'm happy to see that you're finding alternative ways, and I know you're working on your core pricing structure. As far as who's going to be conducting this core pricing structure, can you place that on the record?
Our CIO, Daryl Wade, is the person leading that effort.
And is there a deadline or a timeline on when you plan to have that finished by?
Could you re-ask the question?
Who will be conducting the comprehensive pricing review?
I apologize. I misunderstood your question. That would be done across, led by the finance team of Ms. Hodge and myself, as well as our OSP, which are outside plant, and network operations, which is our, that manages the actual network itself.
And as far as when you're projected to get it finished, and we're not rushing you, but you just want to have an idea, so, because we don't bring you down here often, so we just need to ask as much questions as possible.
To finish that pricing, we plan to do, we plan to have a new pricing model in place by July 1st.
July 1st.
So between now and then is when we'll be doing this analysis.
Thank you for placing that on the record. And as far as your partners, you mentioned a list of partners. Do you expect to have any new partners in the year 2024? Are you currently negotiating with any new partners?
No.
Okay, I rest right there. Just want to have an idea of your financial projections and revenues. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator James. Senator Carrion.
You mentioned that, and following my last colleague's question, regards to comprehensive pricing review, do you have a timeline by when you guys would complete that review and implementation of that new pricing?
We've retained an outside economist to look at, that's currently already doing the due diligence on our finances, our pricing structure and industry trends, to then sit down with first
30
with
seconds.
Ms. Hodge and myself to be able to lay out the framework and then do the analysis to come up with a new pricing model.
Timeline.
The timeline is, it's already begun, and we don't have deliverables yet, but our end goal is to be able to have new pricing model in place by July 1st.
July 1st, okay, very well. And then lastly, so you mentioned about the 95 Wi-Fi hotspots that have been placed and the grant that has been used for that. My question in regards to that, the maintenance of those Wi-Fi hotspots, because this grant is to be able to establish them. What would be the cost now to be able to maintain, and what percentage are they all up?
Yes. Oh, okay, thank you. The maintenance is $1.2 million per year that we use for maintaining the network, pay for the bandwidth that is increased because of that network.
Grant amount.
Yeah, it's part of our ARPA grant. So after that ARPA grant is exhausted, then it's a matter of us out of operating or finding a new funding source to maintain the network.
Sorry, I didn't hear you clearly on this side.
What I mentioned is upon the exhaustion of the ARPA grant, going forward, maintaining the Wi-Fi network will either come out of operating or we will seek another grant opportunity to be able to maintain that network and hopefully expand it even further.
And all 95 are up?
For now,
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
it's all 95 up.
All 95
Oh, yes.
have been installed?
Oh, yes, and counting.
Very well,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Carrion. One of the things that we didn't ask when you spoke about the opportunity to generate revenues from, I don't want to use the wrong term. Boy, did I put away the paper? The project that you're working on. No.
Cloud services?
Say it again.
Cloud services?
No, the one.
Monetization of the
one in the
Wi-Fi?
community.
Oh, community.
The one in the community?
Oh, the community Wi-Fi? Oh, the community Wi-Fi or the?
The one that you're working on right now
Marley Homes?
in St. Croix.
Oh, Marley Homes.
What's the name of that project?
Marley Homes?
No, what's the name? Not the project. The name of your project. Not the name of the community.
Oh, okay. It's a fiber to the home project, and
Okay.
it just so happens to be deployed at the Marley Homes.
Okay, good. So the question that we didn't ask here today is how much revenues do you envision generating from that initiative?
Okay. This particular project is a pilot project of both the business model and the technology. We believe that it's $30 is what the pricing will be. So it's a matter of the penetration of the 90 homes is what, we don't know what that number is going to be. That's part of the test to see what the uptick would be. But we do know that
Uptick meaning interested.
how many of the 90 units will actually take the service for $30.
Got it.
And it's matched, the reason we picked $30 is because it's the same price as the ACP program if it comes back.
Got it. So the question, I'm asking that question because if this works, then do you have folks are you working with the Housing Authority and Housing Finance Authority to determine what's the inventory of the communities?
Yes, when VIHA authorized the MOU, when we entered into the MOU with VIHA for this pilot project, the understanding is that if it goes well, we will roll it out to all of VIHA locations.
Okay, but what we need from you is a actual financial analysis of the potential revenues that you can generate from this.
Okay.
So I am the chair, so I'm asking it through the chair that you guys take some time and look at the potential revenues that you could generate from this.
We'll provide that.
Because we need to, as we learn some things today, there's some things we got to balance out here. Okay?
Understood.
All right, good. Fonseca, you're recognized for your 1 minute. You're good?
Yeah, I'm fine, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
great, thank you. So everybody went. So we have Senator Joseph that has joined us, so thank you for being here. Senator Joseph, we're going to be gracious to you, and we're going to give you the 5 minutes. You may proceed.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. A pleasant good afternoon to you, Madam Chair, our colleagues, as well as Mr. Adams, and also Ms. Hodge from VINGN, and of course the listening and viewing audience. I ran upstairs because I do have some probing questions just to look at the vision and where we're going to be moving with VINGN, given your testimony today. We have emerging markets in technology. I know that you're already aware of the importance that is being stated and flaunted with artificial intelligence. I don't know any of my colleagues may have asked any questions pertaining to that. So if they did, please beg my forgiveness. I ask your forgiveness. So how does our spectrum, as far as broadband spectrum, look as far as to be able to accommodate that? In the Daily News yesterday, I read with interest the amount of money that a territory in the Caribbean is raking in because of some of the opportunities that are available because they are able to tap into certain markets where technology is concerned. What, in your position and your prospect do we have for expanding what we have and the investment over $42 million that the United States government has given to us so that we can also assure that we are producing some revenue generating mechanisms should a company want to move to the Virgin Islands to do those type of businesses here?
I love the question. Thank you very much. Because it gets to the heart of one of the reasons why I came here to begin with. But in the beginning, my answer is not about the spectrum part because that's not really pertains to the AI and other types of technologies. But what BINGN and the territory has in spades that would help is that through our EDC program, we have a tremendous opportunity on tax benefits that are not offered anywhere else in the Caribbean. And most importantly, and this is a very important part about technology and our EDC program, is that U.S. intellectual property protection prevails. And that allows us to be able to do things that you can't do anywhere else on the mainland and nowhere else in the Caribbean. However, our impediment is how much we pay for electricity. The massive data centers that are used for AI consume New York-style amounts of energy. And a data center in Washington, in the state of Washington, those data centers pay between 4 to 6 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. A data center is not feasible in the Virgin Islands unless it has an independent data power source. Hence why Diaspora Link has a data center and power plant built into it as a complete unit.
Thank you so much, because you see, we want to be also, and I realize that there is that connection between AI and us progressing as a territory relative to technology, which is tied critically to our source of power, consistent source of power, and how we are able to provide that for